Hey everybody, welcome to the webinar. I'm really excited to be here. Today we're going to go over, are those collection calls worth $500 each? This is so exciting because listen, right now there are millions of people in America that are getting collection calls on a daily or a weekly basis, and even millions more that have gone through that in the last several years. Now, if you're one of those people who've gotten those collection calls, you totally know what it's like. You know how hard they hit you, how often they call, how something that seems so small at first really starts to add up and like really becomes harassing. But listen, there's a right way and there's a wrong way to go about it, and everybody is going about it the wrong way. This webinar is about the right way, and listen, this will totally change your life. Follow along, and you're going to be amazed. Now, big collectors, big businesses, they're greedy as get out. And so they don't even use human beings now to actually place the phone calls. They actually have like computers where they robo dial you, they robo call you. And what that means basically is instead of someone sitting there making down the numbers with their little fingers, they actually have computers doing it, and they're trying to figure out exactly how many people they can call all at once all across America, to figure out who's going to answer the phone and at what times, and so they can harass them not only with just the placing of the phone calls, but then try to get them on the phone to harass you. You know what I'm talking about. And so the long and the short is there's a right way and a wrong way for them to call you, and if they're doing it the wrong way, they're going to owe you a lot of money, and you're going to be able to get out of debt. And I'm going to show you some brilliant ways of what's going on. So I'm really excited here. Um, and so listen, that's what we're here for. I know that, you don't like what's going on, or you didn't like what happened, and you've got dreams, and this is part of the thing, one of the things that's holding you back. And if you do this right, this could be a thing that helps you move forward in life. And so I got some goals for this video, and they're very clear. These will be my yardstick. And so if I meet these, this will be a successful webinar for you. So if you're currently getting phone calls, you're going to learn after this webinar how to immediately stop them all. It's going to be the bam right off the bat. The next thing you're going to know if you have a case, or I think you may have a case, and you're also going to know how much that case is worth. So if you're currently getting calls, these are the three things at the end of this little webinar you're going to absolutely know for sure. Now, for those who've gotten calls in the past, so let's say those calls have stopped, these are my goals for you. You're going to know if you're owed money, you're going to know how much, and you're going to know, and you're going to learn that you didn't need to take notes about the numbers they were using, the times that you spoke with them, how many times they called, any of those things. We're going to learn that. And so at the end of this webinar, you're going to know that. Now, what am I talking about here? So let's go ahead and get some baseline. We're talking about the Telephone Consumer Protection Act. And that's a law that says basically if someone's robo-dialing you, they're going to have to pay you $500 a call. And so they can robo-dial you, but with exceptions. And basically, let's say the major exception is going to be permission or consent. And that generally means that you actually gave them the current number that they were calling and that you never took it away. And so let me show you. So here's some illegal types of calls, and these are fantastic cases. So raise your own hand if you got one of these, and you have to stick around or it'll be a shame. Number one, you asked them to stop calling. So let's say you got a collector or a business and they're calling your cell phone, and if you've ever, politely or rudely said, hey, stop calling, and they called you back, every one of those phone calls may be worth these $500. And sometimes it's just 5 or 10, sometimes it's 50, sometimes it's 100 plus. If you've ever changed numbers and they found it. And so this goes back again to not giving them permission or consent to call you because you changed phone numbers. So if you ever dropped an old phone number and got a new one, and one of your old debt collectors tracked you down, that is so illegal, it's not even funny. In fact, it's $500 for every time they attempted to call you, regardless if you even picked it up or not. And so those are fantastic cases. The third case that I love is when you never gave them your number. This is This is common when you give someone your home phone number, but they start calling your cell phone. And basically, again, it goes down to the general question: did you give them permission or consent to call you? Because if you didn't, that's big trouble for them potentially. And here's a last one that are great in involving collectors. Is to get another person's collection calls. And let me explain just briefly. Your phone number used to be owned by someone else, most likely. And if you cut your phone loose and you got a brand new phone number, your phone number today would eventually be owned by someone else. It's recycled. And so a lot of times what happens is someone has a bunch of debt collectors. They get tired of the constant phone calls and they drop the phone. They drop the phone number. They get a new phone number. The phone company then gives that phone number to the next subscriber, and it could be you. And then you start getting the person's calls looking for Steve or John or Cindy or Sally or whoever they're looking for. And those calls to you are just as illegal. Now, who am I? I'm Joseph McClelland. I'm from Jackson, Georgia. Personally, I'm a huge Atlanta Hawks fan. I've got my law degree from Loyola School of Law in New Orleans. Amazing place. I'm a member of the prestigious New York and the Georgia Bar. Right now, I've got 17 years experience, and I'm currently one of the top filers of these cell phone cases in Georgia. Now, how do I know all this? Unfortunately, my dad almost lost everything in a really bad investment, and except for debt collectors. He didn't lose those; they came in droves, and I was the only person that could help him. So I had to learn, literally everything that I could, and I interpreted that as that I needed to learn from the best, and I did that. So, and I did, and that was one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. But we were successful at it, and so I got to bring that to you. And so, why should you care? Well, part of what I was doing when I was representing my dad was looking for any type of law that I could use to help, because I'm trying to help my dad. And so one of the things I learned about, there was this guy in Minnesota who practiced kind of this type of consumer law that's more like on the offensive. And so I flew up to Minnesota, dead of winter. It was like 3 degrees. There was like frozen spill on the sidewalk. It was brutal. And to learn about all types of stuff, including the TCPA. And I really couldn't believe it, I'll be honest, when I first learned about it. So when I got back, I started filing a couple of these cases and started learning really to see, if it was legit, how much these cases were worth, would clients be happy, would be financially awesome, and I loved it. Clients loved it. It's generally, from my perspective, generally fun work, and that's because there's the little known law that is called the TCPA, and nobody knows about it. I don't know if that's a conspiracy. I don't know why I didn't learn about it in law school. I mean, I had just never learned about this. I tripped over it. And that's why I'm one of the top filers of these cases, because no one really knows about it. And so just as a brief example, and I'll talk about it more, but I've gotten a bunch of clients' debts erased. I bet I've stopped, thousands and thousands of calls being initiated to clients. I've had clients who make just a few thousand. I've had clients we've gotten check-in for over 50,000. And so, going through this webinar, I want you to imagine what your life's going to be like if you never have to deal with those calls. What's your life going to be like when you get a check-in, 5, 20, I don't know, $50,000 or more for all the phone calls because they are illegal, and you followed along in this webinar here. And just think, like, what kind of difference would that make if this could be your reality? Would it and could it change your life? I bet it would. I'm sure it would. I know it does it has for other people. You may be different. So today, what we're going to cover, the first secret, is why just because you owe someone money doesn't mean they can call you. And we've already briefly talked about that. The second secret is why taking notes of who called, how many times they called is not important. It can be helpful, I would love to have it. It would be beneficial. Do we absolutely need it? No, it's not a requirement. In fact, we'll go over briefly some of the ways that you can help me help you, and some of the things that I will do that you don't even need to participate in. But the long and the short is technology leaves a trace, and I can track down just about anything. Secret 3, this works even if they've stopped calling. So if, a lot of times I'll get a call from a client and they'll say, oh, well, they already stopped calling. Well, it doesn't matter. We could go back 4 years, and technically the older the calls that further back in time they were making those calls, probably the more likely it is that that the calls could be illegal. And so let's jump into this. I'm really excited, and we're doing well. Secret number 1, it doesn't matter if you owe them money. It's all about the permission or consent to be called. So listen, my dad sent me an email when I was representing him, and it was talking about a case where this debt collector who was trying to collect a debt on this guy, I believe it was a guy, ended up having to pay him like $200,000 instead of collecting that money. And I read it a couple times, and like my brain, it was like boing. It didn't accept it because I just never heard about it, and so I didn't really want to believe it. But then I realized, it was this attorney in Minnesota, and so I just had to know what in the world was going on there, because again, I had never seen the ability for a normal consumer to come really that hard at a corporation without, really a major physical injury or some sort of, copyright or trademark or patent infringement. So I just had to know. So it turns out that in the early 90s, and you may remember because you may have had one of those old clunky cell phones, it was really, really expensive to get a call or to make a call. And these telemarketers and collectors figured that when those old phones rang, people would answer them. It was kind of a novelty. Thing would ring and you'd go answer it, and it cost you, $1 to get a robocall. And they could call everybody. Let me go back a second. They literally could just still can put in, start with 0, is, area code 00000000001, and get to the end all nines. And they could just call every single number because it's a computer. Easy as can be. You don't need anyone to do it. So Congress got wind of this, and they actually acted and took some action, political commentary, and they actually made it a law that said, look, it's going to be $500 anytime you make a call if they didn't give you consent when they called. And so what that basically means is, even if you gave them consent, they have to keep consent for every time that they call, and if you never gave them consent, then they're all illegal. And that doesn't matter if you owe them money. It doesn't matter if you owe them $1. It doesn't matter if you owe them $100 or $10,000 or $100,000. You name the number. It doesn't matter. It's $500 for every time that they place that call. And it was interesting. I remember I got a call from this guy, and I'm not going to give you his name, but let's call him Jay. And he was getting all these collection calls, and I remember him saying something like, yeah, I'm getting collection calls, but, I can't do anything about it because I owe money, right? And he really thought that was a thing. And to be honest with you, I guess I kind of thought that was the thing before I had gone to Minnesota and started digging into what consumer law is. But since he asked me the question, since I had been to Minnesota and I had gone through all the stuff helping my dad out, I actually had the answer for him, and I think it changed his life, obviously for the better, because I got to tell him that he literally could just pick up the phone and he didn't have to argue with them or cite any type of law or tell him that he had an attorney. He just had to pick up the phone and ask him to stop calling, and he did. And that was it. And I kind of figured that either it would resolve itself, or he would ask them and they would stop calling, or he would just never tell them and just die to phone calls. But he hit me back. He called me back, and it turns out that he had asked them to stop calling, and they kept calling him, and they called him about 20 more times. And because, as you now know, he had told them to stop calling, all those calls were illegal. And so it didn't take me that long, but a few weeks later I called him up and I told him that his credit card company had just deleted all the debt that he owed. It was a little shy of $10,000, and they had wrote a check for the same amount. And again, even though he owed money. And again, most people, including myself, had originally thought that if you owe money, you can't use this type of law, but you can. Again, because it's all about consent. And just to wrap it up, if they broke this law, they will owe you money, even if you owed them first. Plain and simple, that's a fact. All right. Isn't that awesome? All right. I think that's so awesome. All right, number 2. Why taking notes of who called and how many times they called is not important to you. Okay. I remember when I was in Minnesota, and, this attorney in Minnesota was telling me about his client had gotten, 83 calls or something like that. And I was just like, who are my clients of all these, over a decade of practicing at that time had ever gave me amazingly awesome notes and would have actually, in this type of situation, written down every time they called and what the contents of the call were. And so I was just like, I don't think most normal people, and if you take great notes all the time, if you take great notes, that's awesome. You will be a fantastic client. I'm not insulting you. I'm just saying most people just don't document things at such a high level. And so that was the first thing I thought when I had learned about this. But then I remembered, and also was instructed in the class, that all telephone calls leave a record, and all times they called you is actually on a record, and it's really easy to get, and they actually have to give it to you. And so that's one of the things that we do. We actually research, any number and every number to help find which numbers were your collectors that were calling you. And we make them give us, once we find out who was the debt collector that was calling you, their entire call history of every time they even initiated a call, regardless if you picked it up or if you answered it or you hung up or they misfired. And so therefore, we're the ones, and it's so easy to find out who called, when you spoke to them, the number of calls. Listen, taking notes is nice, but it's not needed. It's fantastic if you do. If you've got them, don't delete them, but it's not needed. And so I remember this really nice woman came in, and she was super nice. She actually called in, and she was talking about something completely else, and I kind of talked her through whether I thought she needed an attorney, which direction she should go, because it was unrelated to what I do now. And but before she hung up, I told her about the TCPA law, and I asked her if she thought she had a case. And I remember she was like, I bet they called me 100 times, but it stinks because I can't remember, when they called, and I can't remember the name of the collector. And what I told her, I'm sure, and I'm positive, changed her life forever, because it was right before Christmas. I got to call her up, and I said, they just deleted any money you owe them, and they wrote a check for $43,000. I think it was $43,001, but anyway, I think it was $43,000. Could have been with plus one extra dollar. She never took any notes, and I still got to make the law work for her. Because listen, they can run, but they can't hide from technology. Every call from every collector is on a list to get. All right, isn't that awesome? I'm loving it because they're busted. All right, secret number 3, and this is the last secret. So guys, why this works, even if they stopped calling in the last 4 years. All right, I remember this teacher in Atlanta called me, unrelated matter, get a lot of phone calls, and I like to help people, and so I was listening to her concerns, and I was helping her out, giving her in the right direction, move in, and I asked her, like everyone, if she knew about TCP law and if she had a case, and she told me she didn't, because the people that were calling her already stopped calling her, and boy, it stunk because they had buzzed her a lot. And but I told her something that, as you now know, was big for her. And so on one morning, I got to call her up and told her that they had just written a check and it would come to my office for $52,001. And listen, it wasn't even her debt. They were calling about some other person. And they'd even already stopped calling years before, but I still made the law work for her because she never gave them consent or permission to call. And on top of that, she even told them to stop calling multiple times. And so listen, even if they stop calling you, they still broke the law and owe you money for each illegal call over the last 4 years. So isn't this all the best? It's awesome. And so now let me ask you a question. Are you getting a lot of this? Are you enjoying this webinar? So far we've covered just because you owe them money doesn't mean they can call you, because remember, it's all about consent. Why taking notes of who called or how many times they called is not important. It's helpful, but not important. And secret number 3, why this works, even if they stopped calling you in the last 4 years, and I missed an I there. So, all right, now who wants to take this thing to the next level? Because we have an offer. We're going to make them stop calling and pay you for each illegal call. We will only charge you a percentage when we win, and that means there is absolutely no risk to you, no risk now, no risk later. If you've got a case and we win it for you, then you will get a recovery. If we take your case and for some reason we can't get you a recovery, then we will not ask you to pay us 1 penny, 1 dime. It means there's no risk to you. And so I'm being serious. Do not miss out on this. I think this law is potentially on the chopping block. It's just a matter of when. And so here's what you're going to get if you decide to proceed and actually hold them accountable in the way they would hold you accountable. Because remember, if you owe them money, they will make sure that you pay them back. The question is if they owe you money, are you going to make sure that they pay you back? And that's what this is about. So here's what you're going to get if you decide to move forward with us. We're going to make sure that they're not calling you anymore. And we're going to make sure they pay you for each call. And now remember, those calls start at $500. They can go up to whatever, as many times as they called you. I just put 250. That would be 500 calls. But and if you have a debt with them, we're going to make sure to get that debt deleted or forgiven. And the value of that obviously depends on how much you owed. And so the value could be, the sky's the limit. It all depends on how many times they called you. Your case will be different, obviously, from anyone else's, because when you revoked permission for them to call you, the number of times they called is different. And so now a lot of things go with that. I'm not just going to stick and move on this one. I'm also going to help you with the full credit report analysis. And what that means for me is that we're going to go over everything in your credit report to see if these guys have done anything else, if there's any other violations, if what's your score, what's holding you back, tips, that type of stuff. And actually, if you just got that, that'd be awesome, because that's me actually going through your credit report, and I'm skilled at that to make sure everything's on point and what you can do to make everything better. So just to recap, we're going to make sure they're going to stop the calls, get paid for each one. If you've got a debt, we're going to try to get that deleted, and I'm going to give you the credit report analysis. I'm also going to give you a guide to fixing your credit score, and so this is going to be kind of a precursor, and so this way you can help identify some of the issues, take some of the first steps, and I'll be there to help you answer the questions, and then eventually look at it with you to make sure that it's being taken care of, that you're not getting held back, because that's what they do. There was an FTC study that said about 80% of people had an error on their credit report. And the people who actually followed the law, and this is a different law, the Fair Credit Reporting Act law, only 25% of those things got fixed. And those other people, the other 75%, have awesome cases that work just like this. And so part of this is to make sure that your credit report is completely fixed and to also identify other things that are holding you back and to see if they owe you money for that. And once again, we work on a percentage. So we're going to make sure that you get this guide to fixing your credit score so you totally understand everything about your credit. I know it sounds boring. It is not boring. Totally. When you find an error on there that's costing you money and then they have to write a check, trust me, it will not be boring. I guess if I sold that, I would sell it for something about like that. I don't know. I just put a price. Trust me, I'm not selling it. Don't ask me if you can buy it. I literally will. If you don't have a case and you're still watching this thing and you want me to review your credit score and your credit report, then call my office or email me, and I literally will have you in and do it for free. And I would assume that you at least have one debt collector. How to put it? If you don't have any debt collectors or you don't have anything on there that's wrong, there's no reason for you to come in. But if you do, I definitely want you in. And so listen, right now, we need to break an old habit. Habits are hard to break. We all have habits, good ones and bad ones. But right now, since you may have known about this law or you may not have known about the law, but right now your current habit is not doing anything about it. Either dodging the phone calls, using a call blocking app, just hoping they don't call, or just not answering any calls that you don't recognize anymore, or just being happy that they stopped calling. That's the old way. I want you to break the habit and take action now. Listen, on this page, there's either a phone number for you to call or a button for you to click. To get in touch with me, like, you totally need to take this action, and the only way to break the habit is to do it like right now. And so just remember, what you're going to do when you call me, and all this is free, is that if you've got a case and I'm going to take it, then we're going to stop the calls, make sure they pay you, get your debt deleted. I'm going to completely review your credit report. I'm going to give you the guide to what's going on with your credit score, and that has value. But just having this information alone is not going to do anything if you don't break the habit and give me a call or click the button so that I can contact you. Just knowing this stuff is not going to get you anywhere. You need to move forward, if you want those calls stopped and to get paid for them, and basically have them have to remember to have to get rid of your debt, because they're going to owe you so much more than you owe them, to fully know what your credit score is going on. And I'm also going to give you a checklist, about what to do with the collectors on your credit report. But basically, it's going to be a holistic approach. And what I also do when the check comes in, I really like to help people see if I can negotiate other things on their credit report, give them advice on how to move forward in other matters. If you've got money, your credit score can be greatly impacted with just a few little steps. If you don't, there's also plenty of steps you can do, but you just got to know. It's just the rules of the game. And they don't teach you this for a reason. They don't want you to know this. When I learned this, I couldn't believe I had just learned this. I was a little pissed. Excuse my language. And so now, my biggest thing is to try to get this to you. And that's like us versus them. It's a great transition here. I've always been an underdog. I don't know why. I feel like I was born an underdog. No matter how much success I have, I'm still an underdog. I don't feel like I'm part of the crowd. And I consider the crowd to be massive corporate America, and they're gunning for you. And like I had said earlier, you think they're going to forgive debt for you just cause? You're just going to look the other way because they're busy? No, they will freaking pay someone to track you down. And the fact that right now 1 in 15 people have one of these cases, and this is you, and you're sitting on 20, 50, hundreds of phone calls that you now think that are illegal because you've now learned this law and the rules. Man, if that's you, just ask yourself this one question. If they had this advantage on you, would they use it? Would they hold your feet to the fire? And if they would, then you really need to think about, what are you doing? This is us versus them. And so, definitely say goodbye to running to the phone, seeing that it was an unknown number. Say goodbye to that debt that's been hovering over you and how they make you feel every time they call. If this is happening to you, say goodbye to all those memories. They will all be wrapped in to the last memory, which was you getting the last laugh on them because they broke the law and you busted them with my help. Now, is there a guarantee? Now, listen, as an attorney, I cannot guarantee an outcome of any case. That's by law. But what I can guarantee is that I'm not going to charge you one penny ever. And I can also guarantee that if I take your case and for some reason we don't get anything, I personally will write you a check for $25 for your troubles. And that's not if I mess up. That's if, like, it literally, we sue them and they go out of business. We sue them and it turns out it wasn't them that actually ever called. Their number was being spoofed by someone crazy. I mean, if the world ends and blah, 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 still get $25. And what I'm doing there is showing you that, the risk is on me. If this has happened to you or is happening to you, I want to be there for you. You totally deserve to pop these dudes, and they deserve it. They're the worst. They are the worst. They are doing this to young people, old people, sick people. I mean, people who are dying of cancer, man. They are the freaking worst. Someone woke up one day with money and thought, it would be a great business idea for me to go buy misery in someone's debt at like pennies on the dollar and harass the crap out of them. Boy, that would just make me feel so good about how I make my money. You know what I say? Dude, I'm gunning for you, dude. And if they're doing it to you, I'm the vehicle that can get you there. And it's risk-free. I think I don't know if I'm happy I learned this information. And I'm so happy that, like, I got to be successful for my dad. I mean, that literally was the price of worth the price of admission to going into law school and everything. To be the hero for my hero will never be forgotten, and I will never not be able to be impacted by that. And when it happened, you don't spike the ball when you look up and your team's losing. And I'm an underdog, and so my team's losing. This is happening to everybody. And so I really, I got to internalize my own victory then. But I went back and put together my game plan on how I can bring out the best of what I learned to help everybody in the biggest ways possible. And so when I learned this, and after the victory, I realized that, like, I've got to be the one to, like, pump this stuff out because no one knows this. I'm a lawyer. I never learned about it. I only learned about it from an email from my dad that got me to Minnesota to hear from it from this one attorney that does it up in Minnesota for Minnesotans. And I now have brought it back to Georgia, and this is for you. Now, Now, remember, if you're still here and you still haven't joined, remember, you're going to get the calls deleted. I'm going to look at your credit report. We're going to know everything about you. And so I think now it's time for you to go ahead and get started with our legal service. And remember, it's going to be free to you. We only charge when we win, and then it's a percentage. So that means you're never going to come out of pocket. It's literally free to you. And, I mean, you've got two choices. You can go back to getting harassed, dodging the calls, using call block apps, or just trying to forget about all those months and years they blew your phone up, and forget about the fact they owe you money. Or you can take the better choice, which is to take action, to, like, hold their feet accountable to the fire just like they held your feet to the flames, and to actually better your life and be able to live your dreams when you aren't held back by them and can get ahead financially. And so by this time you already know what you're getting. And so, the next thing I guess I want to talk about is what you're doing now. And now you're going through the aggravation and the harassment, and you question yourself if you want to answer those phone calls when they're unknown numbers. And just think about where you're going to be later when the phone rings. You're going to know, like, who is this calling? Do they have a right to call? And am I making money because they never had the right to call? Or if they do have the right to call, you then know that you actually have control, full control, to either let them continue to call or tell them that you can't call. And now you probably still owe them money, or even if you paid them off, you still, either you owe them money or you paid them off. But in the future, later, if you take action, you're not going to owe them because they're just going to forgive the debt because they owe you so much. And the same thing about your bank account. I don't know what your bank account is. I don't know you. But if they called you a ton, 20, 30, 50, 100 plus times, 200 times after you told them no, or you never gave them consent, you know the rules, your bank account's going to be dramatically different, and it wasn't any risk to you and almost no work. And so, I think you should get started stopping the calls because it's free to you. And so, I've gotten some questions in from some people, and so I'm going to go over a handful of questions for the next 4 or 5 minutes, and hopefully this will wrap it up for you. Let's see. Can people call you at work? Well, if they're calling on your cell phone, it doesn't matter where you are when you're getting the calls. If you're asking me, can they call your work cell phone number, exact same rules apply. Did you get, it's all about consent. It doesn't matter if it's a work phone versus a personal phone. And I guess the last part of that question might be, what if they're calling your office main number? Can they do that? Well, if they're not calling a cell phone, we're using a different law, but I would briefly say they can do it until you tell them that not to, or they're not allowed to. And then at that point in time, if they continue, they're breaking the law. All right, next question. I'm getting calls for the previous owner of the cell phone number. Okay, yeah, we've talked about that. Just to recap, if you're getting numbers for someone else and they're a stranger, it could be the previous cell phone owner. It could be someone, I guess, put the number in wrong and are calling you. Those calls are illegal, regardless if you tell them not to call or not. Technically, the first time it calls you, that call is legal. Every time after that will be illegal. But for all intents and purposes, they're all illegal, basically. Next question. How many times can they call you? Great question. It's not about how many times they call you. If you never gave them permission, one time is too many. But how many times can they call you? There's no limit. I've seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. So it's more about how often or what their system is set up to call, how many times it's programmed to call you. A lot of times they're programmed to call you 30, 40, 50, 60 times. Sometimes it's hundreds. All right, next question. And we're doing great. Listen to this. This is awesome, right, guys? How early can they call you? Again, if it's on the cell phone, all the same rules apply. There are some state laws with Georgia, home phone or cell phone, regardless of consent. I believe it's 8 o'clock in the morning and maybe 9 or 10 at night. I mean, what you've learned here is this about consent. And listen, if they're calling your house phone, just tell them not to call you. Doesn't do it, you're going to need to write a letter. Write a letter, keep a copy of it. If they call you after that, you got a great case, call me, be able to delete the debt. Not worth as much, just probably worth a few $1,000. All right, moving on. How to get phone records. Phone records are very easy to get. On my end, we can just subpoena them. On my end, we can just ask the other side to give us their computer printout. They generally don't fudge it up. You also can get your own phone records. Generally, just go to your phone company's website, log in. You probably set up a password because you've probably never been before, unless that's how you pay. Just log in and then look at your billing statement, and they'll have a list of your calls. Generally, some phone companies go back years and years and years. Some are shorter in time. Some you have to actually request, and they'll mail them to you. But generally speaking, for your phone records that you can get at the phone company online, Generally, if you spoke to someone for about 6 seconds or they left a message, it'll be on there. If you didn't answer the phone at all, it probably won't register. Also, you can find numbers by looking at through your call history on your cell phone. And also go into your voicemails. A lot of times you'll find they left a message and you'll be able to track down who it was that was calling you. All right? That's cool. All right, how many years? I guess you're asking me how many years. Let's go back in 4 years. So if you've been getting calls within the last 4 years, we can go back and get those. Getting calls for family members. Same answer. If for all intents and purposes, if you're getting calls and they're not for you, you didn't give them consent. Talk to me. That should play out. We'll talk on an individual basis. IRS calls. I'm getting calls from IRS. They keep calling. Okay. The IRS calls are generally scams. I'd almost say 100% of the time. If you're getting a call from the IRS, and it is the IRS, I would nicely tell them to give you some sort of account number or a feedback number. Do not disclose your social security number. Hang up the phone. You can, if you're truly interested and feel like there is an issue to address, like you haven't paid your taxes or there's an issue, you can go online, call the actual IRS, and give them that account number, and they can tell you whether or not you actually got a call. That easy. But listen, that is a big scam. Do not fall for it. Why does everyone get them? Everyone gets them because they work. Just like why people get those Nigerian emails. Why do people do it? Because they actually work. Some percentage of people actually work on. The IRS is a lot more believable, and in theory, and again, because a computer can dial everyone from 000000001 to all nines. By definition, you can get a call from them, and it's that easy, and that's why they're doing it. And so if you are getting those calls, as soon as you realize and identify that they're scammers, same thing if you're getting a letter. If you're getting a letter, I would call the IRS too, because they're sending out a bunch of bogus letters too. So I would call the IRS and go backwards. If there's some sort of account or identification number, or just your social, they'll be able to identify that. Don't just call someone back because they wrote you a letter. Don't just tell someone information because they called you. If it's IRS, go to the source. You'll be happy you did. Scammers. What about scammers calling, selling me stuff, including student loan? Alright, student loans, scammers. Telemarketing is illegal if you didn't give them permission. A lot of times people are scammers. If you're getting a call and it's from an actual company that you've heard of, I would consider those to be valid potential cases if you either never gave them your contact number to begin with, or you asked them to stop calling, or you press one of the buttons for them not to call you. If it's an actual company, then I think that's a great case. So the last step. So here you are. You're part of the select. You've gotten to the last step, and listen, that is to call my office. So many people have the information, get to the end, and don't take this final step. And there's 2 steps, and it's either you call the office and start the process of just us talking. I never charge money. I don't have anything to sell. If you don't have a case, I'm not going to sell you on it because it would be a terrible business move. And so, but if you've got a great case and it's a strong case, my goodness, definitely call my office right now. Or you can click the button and we will then reach out to you if you're not in a position to call right now. And guys, that's it. That's the last slide. I'm Joseph McClelland. I've got an office in Decatur. For most of these cases, I don't require people to come into my office. We can do it all by email. A lot of times, if you also want some more in-depth credit analysis, coming to the office might be a little more fun. I love to meet clients. I love to meet people and to see you and know you on a more individual basis by talking to you and seeing you and shaking your hand. But if you don't need to or can't make it because you're on the other side of town, or you work crazy hours, or just flat don't want to come into a lawyer's office, I totally get that. I wouldn't want to go to a lawyer's office myself, and I'm a lawyer. And so, guys, that's it. Joseph McClelland, I'm wishing you and yours all the best in life, and I hope to talk to you soon. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.